right, all right. I guess it's time for some of that. Thank you for joining me. Good morning. Hope everybody's having a wonderful morning. All right. No need for the Omni talk. Thank you for joining me this morning. I wanted to continue on the conversation that we were having about neuro training and frequencies on our last video. By the way, this is Devin Lockett, the holistic American warrior, also known as OG Red Dog, here to talk to you about healthy ways to stay healthy and stay out of the doctor's office if you don't have to go, and ways to avoid medical tyranny, for lack of a better word. This is an electroencephalographic amplifier. In other words, this is a brain amplifier. This is an EEG amplifier. This is akin to an EKG, with the EKG or ECG, depending on where you are. If you're in Europe, it's ECG. What the ECG or the EKG does for the heart, the neuroamp, right, the encephalographic amplifier does for the brain. Now, I am a neurofeedback clinician, and of many years actually, and I know my way around the human brain. Okay, I'm going to be honest with you about that. I really do. Now, after years, and you guys understand how I came into study neurofeedback, so I'm not going to continue beating that dead horse. But after years, hold on one second, let me see something. Oh wow, this is incredible. I've actually got 3 views here. This is really good. I'm going to give you guys a treat today. It's going to be a choice of many views. Anyway, after about 10 years, from 2015 until 2025 of doing neurofeedback therapy. Oops, can't do that. That's cool. Let's see. How about here? We can go back and forth from here. After 10 years of doing neurofeedback therapy, I know my way around the human brain. And I understand the different frequencies that, oops, wow, look at that. Then the other microphone comes on. That's really good. Okay. I understand the frequencies by which to train the brain, and the optimal frequencies to train different areas of the brain for different purposes. We can address, here's the protocol guide. Shout out to the OPMers at the EEG Institute. We can train the different lobes of the brain, as you can see here, for different things, as you can see, attention to detail, erratic swings in mood, okay? And we train them, the different areas, at different frequencies, right? So you can see each frequency of neocortical arousal, that's what these frequencies are, training frequency, has from slow to fast, from delta all the way up to gamma and high gamma, has a corresponding frequency, a corresponding state of physical arousal. So yes, if you do train someone in the delta state, 4 hertz or lower, you can put them asleep. If you're training them in the theta state, this is around 7 hertz, you can make someone drowsy, or you can train someone to drowsiness. That's called the theta state, around 7 hertz, and it's the optimal state for hypnotherapists because you can access subconscious. This is the dream state frequency and frequency family, one of my favorites actually. And you can access repressed emotions and repressed memories and dig out a lot of stuff. Okay, and as you get higher, if you get into beta is about 20 hertz. And beta is about what you would be at if you were listening to me right now, for example, and trying to learn, listening to a lecture. And high beta, around 25 hertz, is what you would experience if you're actually trying to solve a math problem or trying to think about anything at all. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to introduce this brainwave chart. Okay, now I don't mind. Maybe I can swing to the side here so that you can still see me a little bit. But what you see here, we're going to start at the bottom, the blue zone right here, right? Oh yeah, that's cool. I can, nope. How do I, there you go. Perfect. Here in the blue zone, we have the delta waves, right? That's 5 hertz or 0.5 to 4 hertz. We're going to say 4 hertz down to 0 hertz altogether because I perform infra-low neurofeedback therapy, and we actually go down even slower than 0.5 hertz. But you can see that that frequency band is associated with deep sleep, transcendence, and restoration. Then at a higher frequency, 4 to 8, usually the optimum for me, I like 7, but okay. 4 to 8, that's the theta zone. 7 is right in between there. So that's associated, you can see here in the green bar, that's associated with visualization, trance, and dreaming. Okay? Alpha waves, 8 to 12 hertz. Now, alpha waves, we're going to say in the yellow band here, 8 to 12 hertz, they say meditation, creativity, and relaxation. I would say that. Most people, when you accumulate an inordinate amount of neocortical dysregulation, kinks, if you will, in the neocortex. The neocortex is the outer wrinkly portion of the brain. Let me see if I can get an image here for you. Hold on one second. I should have prepared. Sorry about this. But I have some nice images. Because I'm a brain guy, right? So let's see. Alright, so we're gonna browse. Yeah, here we go. Now, pardon the golden. Oh no, that's terrible. It's supposed to be in. No, we're gonna have to change that. We're gonna have to replace that with another image. Give me 1 second, people. I have a lot of brain images. I just don't want to waste a good one. I think this one will work. There you go. Alright, so let's open this up a little bit. So this is the neocortex, the outer portion of the brain that most people consider the brain. But no, there are several lobes and several cortices. This is only the neocortex, the one that was the last to evolve. And on your neocortex, as a result of the stresses that we experience in life, people literally do work on your nerves. Yes, they do. And when this happens, you accumulate dysregulation in the neocortex. And the reason I stopped my explanation of frequencies to tell you that is because we're on alpha waves, right? We're on alpha waves. And the alpha state is where you're usually happy, right? When you wake up in the morning, right? You're at a nice, nice alpha wave state, and just coming out of dream sleep, coming out of theta into alpha, and you're relaxed and awake. Well, if you have an inordinate amount of neocortical dysregulation, which results from stress, anxiety, depression, drugs, alcohol, a lot of things, intense emotion, negative relationships. The overaccumulation of this dysregulation is what we know of as PTSD. Okay, and I'm going to get into chronic PTSD here in a minute. All right, so here we go up the frequency chart. Right, beta waves, 12 to 30 hertz. Beta waves are great. Okay, beta waves are associated with alertness, concentration, and thinking. So when you get above 24, 25, it's considered high beta. You can split it up into beta and high beta. But either way, beta waves is where you would like to train if you came into my shop, where you would like to train if you were preparing for an exam, or if you had something really, intense going on, like you were going to give a speech or something that was going to require 100% of your mental capacity. Now, here we're in the higher zone, gamma. Gamma waves are 30 hertz to 100. So now, many physicians, we're not going to get into what physicians believe or don't believe, because, physicians are people and they agree in their opinions and sometimes they don't. And I'm not a physician, so I'm not even going to step into that, into that zone. However, I train myself in the gamma zone when I train. It's taken years to get up to get rid of the neocortical dysregulation sufficiently enough so that the higher frequencies don't cause anxiety and stress. And this is something that you have to learn from training and education and neuroscience, as well as experience doing neurofeedback. Now, I want to show you guys a couple of other charts here. You can raise your own frequency. You can raise the frequency that your typical operational frequency with slow, steady, consistent neurofeedback training sessions in short interval. The brain is very elastic, right? So the brain tries to snap back, and it'll try to snap back to an unhealthy state. So if you're going to do neurofeedback, you have to commit to a block of a minimum of 20 sessions, and you have to, if you want to get the most out of them, you should try to do the sessions every day, or at least with a very short interval, one session every day. And that's why when I was open, I would stay open on Saturdays and Sundays and on the weekends, so that I can help people to provoke a shift. The goal is to provoke a permanent shift in brain function. So if you hit the brain, if you train your brain, and you train your brain with an experienced neurofeedback clinician, you can first use neurofeedback to get rid of neocortical dysregulation. Move then into what I would suggest, alpha theta. Alpha theta is very good for dealing with repressed emotions and a lot of stuff. It's very good, especially in combination with talk therapy, if you happen to be in talk therapy, or if you're in any type of a group surrounding, like 12-step or anything like that, because that's really all vibrational. You sit in a 12-step program meeting and you listen to a bunch of other people talking about how their lives have become unmanageable because of their use of substances or whatever it is that 12-step is about, whatever the particular addiction is. And one after another, you listen to everyone's story, and it puts you at a vibrational level where you are ready to purge your issues, and it makes it more comfortable for you to share because you're at that vibrational level. Now, that is called a spiritual vibration. This is where things are separating in this talk that we're having right now. That's not a physical vibration. That is a spiritual vibration. And there are charts for that as well, okay? Let's let the train pass. right. So first, I want to give you the simple view because this is a beautiful chart. I really like this vibrational energy chart. Okay, and this is I have to give credit where credit is due. Was developed by Dr. David R. Hawkins, right? David R. Hawkins. I have some cousins that are Hawkins. Shout out to the Hawkins family. Shout out Anikiala. What's up? Paula, Ingrid. How's everybody doing? Clarence. I love you guys. I love all of my cousins. I love all of my family. So I love you guys. And y'all know there's too many of us for me to start naming everybody. Okay, there are literally hundreds of us, especially in New Orleans. So don't hate. Anyway, the vibrational energy chart. Okay, here we have the vibrational energy chart by David Hawkins, and you're going to see these frequencies don't correlate to the frequencies that I discussed in before, that I discussed in our discussion of neurofeedback. Okay. However, while you are training the brain to handle the higher frequencies in synchrony neurofeedback, I'm getting ahead of myself. I was talking about alpha theta for purging emotional baggage. Then once we purge the emotional baggage, you get into synchrony. Synchrony is where we are using both channels of the amplifier. As you can see, there are two channels, channel 1 and channel 2, to train the two hemispheres of the brain to work in synchrony with each other. Believe it or not, they don't usually do that. The hemispheres of the brain don't usually do that. And if you do this training, let me get this out of my own face. We'll come back to it. If you do this training, and whilst abstaining from alcohol and drugs and other toxins, right? That's very important to keep your body and your brain clean when you're in this process of trying to provoke a shift, right? When you're in the process of provoking a shift, especially if you're raising your own frequency, you can accomplish this. You can accomplish this as long as you stay clean and sober, and it helps to live alone, I guess, because you're going to be dealing with raising your optimal frequency, raising the frequency at which your brain and your mind operates. But it's a good thing to do. And if you do this, you're going to find that slowly and surely, especially after you provoke a shift, if you continue to train, you're going to find that your vibrational energy starts to rise as well, okay? Now, this is where we get into what is called emotional intelligence, right? This is a whole different frequency chart, a whole different scale, a whole different frequency scale than what we were looking at when we were talking about delta waves, theta waves, alpha waves, beta waves, high beta waves, and gamma waves, right? Now we're looking at where your soul is at. I love using that, at. Where your soul is at any particular time, okay? And where you're operating. Now, here we have, well, where do we start? We start with the top or the bottom? Let's start at the top. I'm an optimistic guy, right? Enlightenment, or what one would call God mind, okay, or Godhead. And that's one with the Creator. That is connection to Source. That is being in the presence of God. That is having basically it's enlightenment. I mean, we can stay here all day and describe what enlightenment is. Beneath that is peace. Okay, which is where we all want to be. And then joy, right? Joy. I personally love joy. Shout out to my Aunt Joy, who I love very much. But besides you, Aunt Joy, I love the expression of joy and the experience of joy, even though my face is getting burned right now. But it's pretty joyful. Beneath that is reason. Reason is pretty much where I operate all the time, right? Between those three, reason, love, and joy, because I am a creative person, and these are the creative frequencies. These are the frequencies. When I talk on my run, I talk a lot about when you've got the light, when the light shines within you, it's that creative spark. Well, that means that you're up here at the top. You're up here at least above the frequency of 400. 400 is reason. Okay, 400 is reason. All right. 350 is acceptance. Okay, 350 is acceptance. 310 is willingness. As you go down the frequency band, neutrality, courage. Beneath that is pride. Now, this isn't the pride that results from setting standards of behavior and living up to those standards. That would be closer, higher to reason, because you're setting standards of behavior for yourself and living up to those standards. But this is the type of pride that people express in their block, their neighborhood, their gang set, their race, their favorite football team, the city that they're from, the country that they're from, the religion that they embrace, the color of their skin, things that people don't choose and for themselves. And these are all chosen for us by the Almighty, but people feel empty inside. As you can see, you're sliding down. You're going from a state of fullness into emptiness. So now you have that pride, right? You have that white nationalist or whatever, black national. Doesn't matter what color. When people start getting into that zone right there, it's now you're starting to get into the antisocial zone, right? So we go down frequency into anger, okay? Anger. You can get stuck on anger. So you just keep in mind that only the present exists. The past doesn't exist, and the future doesn't exist, right? So worrying about the future causes you anxiety, and worrying about the past causes you anger and grief. Neither one are really valuable. They're kind of wasted emotions because there's nothing you can do about the past or the future. But people get stuck there, right? And then they get stuck in their desire. Well, I mean, we're being inundated with corn, right? We're being inundated with peas and corn. And and so, you can't get on your phone or on the internet without seeing peas and corn. And you can become a corn addict, right? You can be pretty corny if you're not careful. So you can get stuck in that area of desire. If you start flushing yourself with dopamine, you start getting on a dopamine addiction, a dopamine loop. Okay, eating that corn. Okay, then below desire is fear. Now, remember, there are really only two emotions. There are love and fear. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, fear, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so love is 4 from the top and fear is 4 from the bottom. But fear, you can use fear to explain all of your negative emotions, right? Because they're all representative of a withholding of love, right? Fear represents a withholding of love from the self, expressed through a withholding of love for others, right? So if people haven't evolved to the point where they can understand this, then they're going to go through kind of a miserable life. Now, below that is grief. Grief is a tricky one because I've been grieving. Sometimes, you grieve as a result of a loss, and that loss is something that you couldn't help, right? The death of a loved one, or the death of the soul of a loved one, or the death of the character of a loved one. And but you can still deal with that, express the emotions that need to be expressed, go through the 4 stages of grief, of acceptance, and get yourself up to acceptance, right? Now, below there is where it gets really dangerous, because we were talking earlier about complex post-traumatic stress disorder, or CPTSD. And people who have suffered repeated abuses, sometimes in childhood, most of the time in childhood, but many times in other areas of life, they get stuck in between grief that they really never process, which is perhaps the taking away of their innocence, and they slide into being first cynical, and then, unfortunately, nihilistic. They become nihilists. And here in the bottom are nihilists, right? Grief, apathy, they don't care anymore, right? Screw it, the screw it attitude, guilt. Sometimes people feel guilt, and then the lowest one is shame. That's 20 hertz. That's pretty bad. That's pretty low. That's about the lowest emotion that a person can experience. And now we're getting into the area of abuse and of being abused, right? Because God didn't put us here to be down in grief, apathy, guilt, and shame. That's really not the experience that we were put here to have. And sometimes, some people are very unfortunate because of having suffered whatever traumas that they've suffered in their life, and they're stuck there. And what they end up doing is hurting others, because they go through life like a bull in a china shop, and instead of addressing their own issues, they take their issues out on others. And it's really sad. And also, speaking of abuse, down here at the bottom, apathy, guilt, and shame, the abuser takes control of the abused through trauma bonding. Trauma, traumatizing, trauma bonding, right? That's what abuse, especially things like sexual abuse, that's where that comes from. And so we've all heard about Stockholm syndrome, and how a child can become Stockholmed. Well, when you have a parent that sexually abuses a child, they're basically traumatizing them and making them feel incredible guilt and incredible shame for such horrible behavior, that it pushes that person down. It's a victim creating another victim, right? A victim creating another victim, and it's very sad. But I've had the good fortune of being able to help people, many people, fight their way up. And there's a way of finding this out, figuring this out, by talking to your clients, especially if I'm doing alpha theta neurofeedback. If I've gotten with a client and we're doing neurofeedback, right? Regular, we're doing the neurofeedback. We're taking out first the dysregulation in the neocortex with infra-low neurofeedback. That's a lot of fun. You can watch a movie, you can play a video game while you're in infra-low neurofeedback, and it's very enjoyable. It's the foundation of clearing away neocortical dysregulation that has accumulated in a person's life. Now, with normal people, we accumulate in normal life, typical lifestyles. We accumulate a lot of dysregulation in the parietal lobe, And the a lot of veterans that come back from combat experiences, they also in their PTSD, they also get a lot of neocortical dysregulation in the frontal lobe because they've been in a state of hypervigilance or hyper awareness in a combat zone for extended periods of time, not even being able to sleep soundly. So they tend to get a sort of diamond pattern that occurs in the frontal lobe. I have been able to successfully treat a lot of veterans. Shout out to my fellow veterans, my brothers and sisters in arms in the United States military. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your continued service. And I will continue through the Homecoming for Veterans program to provide free therapy for my fellow veterans, as well as for police officers who also have a very strenuous life, strenuous existence. So, how do you find out where a person is? You know, I really cannot help but think along this chart. Once you start working with this chart, especially as a neurofeedback clinician, especially as an energy worker, especially as a holistic therapist, and no, I'm not a talk therapist, then it's kind of hard not to think in terms of this chart here. Okay, let's start from the bottom up. All right, and we're talking about the same frequencies. This is really the same chart that we just looked at. Okay, when people are in survival mode, this is why I'm saying I've actually broken up with people over where they were on this chart, okay? Because hard experience has taught me that you can have compassion, your heart can go out, and you can want to help someone, but if they're down here in the bottom, in the survival paradigm, anger, desire, fear, right? Grief, apathy, guilt, and shame. If they're down there, they will pull you down. That energy can be very powerful, and it can be very magnetic. So you have to be careful, because the people that are down in this survival paradigm, most of the time, they're what you call dark triads, right? They have dark triad tendencies. They're in survival mode. So they have to be narcissistic, Machiavellian, and psychopathic. All right. I try to explain to my kids what the dark triad is to try to avoid dark triad people. Narcissism, we all know what narcissism is. We can talk about Narcissus, who stared at himself in the pond until he became the Narcissus flower and floats in the water. Machiavellianism, Niccolo Machiavelli wrote a book called The Prince, in which basically, to give you the cliff notes, the expression the ends justify the means, or all the means shall be justified by the ends, came from Machiavelli, and that book, The Prince, and the writings of Niccolo Machiavelli. So when a person is ruthless, because in one word, Machiavellianism is ruthlessness. When a person is ruthless and they're willing to break a few eggs to make an omelet, or sacrifice the well-being of others in the pursuit of their goals, or to misrepresent themselves as having virtues that they actually don't have, politicians come to mind. Those people are Machiavellian. And of course, we all know what a psychopath is, a complete lack of compassion for others, lack of empathy. So when you're dealing with people who are in the survival paradigm, on the one hand, as a healthcare provider, my heart goes out, because I know that if the person that is in this lower echelon does sincerely want to change, I can help them. But if they don't sincerely want to change, then they're just going to cause me a lot of BS, right? And so we can say pride is also in there. As you notice, pride is really below the line here, because it's when you start dealing with the dark triad people that are in survival mode, right? They tend to play games. They tend to try to gaslight. They tend to they feel as though that they are victims, and when a person is a victim in their own mind, then they justify everything that they did because they're automatically at a disadvantage because they did it to them. So that's one of the things that you have to look out for. Now, above pride is courage. Well, yeah, courage is still a sense of despair, because the hero still feels like a piece of crap, and so he feels as though himself is an acceptable sacrifice for the cause. And so it's not the healthiest state, but it's better. You're coming into reason and integrity, right? Because if you have courage, then that means that you're willing, or at least able, to behave with a sense of integrity. Okay. Above courage is neutrality. Hey, well, I don't have a dog in the fight. That's not the same as apathy, right? Apathy is I don't give a shit one way or the other. But neutrality is, I can understand how this person feels, and I can also understand how the other guy feels. Willingness, okay? Willingness, now you're becoming, there's a little bit more of a grasp of your worth. You're becoming optimistic. Let's look at the emotional states. Let's look at the predominant emotional states. Let's start actually from the bottom again. Okay, let's start from the bottom. No. Let's stay where we are. We're gonna go up and down. Okay. So with neutrality, let's go back first. Neutrality is trust. Yes, it's trust. Their view of life is satisfactory. Their view of God is enabling them, and their process is one of release. Actually, no, we need to start from the bottom. I'm sorry, because it won't make sense unless we go through it all. So let's go back to frequency 20, shame. The predominant emotional state is humiliation, right? Their view of life is miserable, and their view of God is depressing. Despising. They feel as though God despises them, and many times, it's not for bad reasons. Like an example I gave earlier about a parent that sexually abuses their child. They're constantly pushing their own child down into humiliation, down into the 20, the lowest frequency zone, by making them repeat that behavior because, of course, the child feels, humiliation. Their view of life is miserable. They think that God despises them. And it's very unfortunate because people can actually, unalive themselves in that state. Above that is guilt. All right. The predominant emotional state is blame. Well, like a lot of times you find, the baby mama that has to define herself as the victim of the baby daddy, even 10, 12 years after they've never cohabitated together. And, their view of life is evil, right? Because if they're blaming, that means that they view themselves as a victim. Their view of life is evil, and their view of God is vindictive, right? Their God view is vindictive, and their process is destruction. They destroy everything. They destroy everyone. They destroy everyone they come into in contact with. They destroy everyone they touch, and they'll even destroy their own offspring if you allow them to do that. When you get above, you get into apathy. Now, this is where we talk about cynicism and nihilism, right? First, sometimes in certain cultures, we have adapted a view of cynicism or even nihilism, the belief that there is nothing sacred, as wisdom. A lot of people actually think it's wisdom. So, they take the see a fool, use a fool approach to life. And so, that's why it's important. That's why I'm going over this, because when you're treating someone, you talk to them and you can get reflected back to you where they are vibrationally, where they are in their soul, where they are in their heart. Not just where they are in their mind, but where they are in their spirit. Okay? A person who's in the apathy zone is their predominant emotional state is despair. And their view of life is that life is hopeless. Their view of God is that God is condemning them. And they're at a process of abdication, which means they're letting go. They don't care. Okay? Giving up. Above that is grief. Well, the predominant state is regret. The view of life is tragic. A tragic view of the world. I was once close with a refugee, someone who arrived as a refugee, and I did my best to love her, but the fact is, sometimes people at a very young age adapt a very tragic sense of life. And so they see life through a tragic lens, and they're never able to open up their heart and accept the blessings that God is trying to give them. Their God view is disdainful. A lot of times people, there are things like colorism. Colorism has touched many communities. And it's unfortunate, and I'm saying this as a light-skinned person in the black community, but, a lot of people feel punished. They feel like God has punished them, and therefore they feel as though a lower sense of self-worth as a result of how they have been influenced by their culture and by the cultures that have touched their cultures. Their process is despondency. Okay, there's despondency. That's being in despair when you're at a particular state where you don't think that there's any hope. You don't think that God will forgive you for something that you've done or for a number of things that you may have done. And, this, once again, it brings us back down into the abuse, the child abuse paradigm, because, the abuser, trauma bonds with the victim by making them repeat these behaviors that cause regret, despair, cause the child to feel a tragic and hopeless view of life and whatnot. Now, still in the survival paradigm, fear. Right now we're at a energetic log of 100. Predominant emotional state is anxiety. The view of life is that life is frightening. I really, really, really feel an intense amount of compassion for people who are experiencing life at this level. Their God view is punitive. They feel as though God is punishing them, and their process is one of withdrawal. Right? They're withdrawing from life because they're scared. Right? When you're scared, you fight or flee. You run. Right? Okay. And then above that is desire. Desire is good. You're starting to wake up. You're coming out of the fear state. If you're not reactive, if you're not reacting to something fearfully, if you're not reactive, then you're stepping into a state of proactivity, right? So that takes us into desire. Desire is a frequent energy log of 125. And in that predominant emotional state is your craving, right? So at least you're going out, you're trying to get some, you're trying to find some company. That's usually in young men indicative of being up to that state, and or you want to go out and hustle and make that money, right? That's desire as well. All right, but your predominant state is craving. Your view of life is disappointing, so you're hungry. All right. And your God view is denying. You think God is denying you of something, so you're in a state of desire. And your process is one of enslavement. I'm sorry, that's where you are. Because you will be the slave of your desires. Now, above that is anger. Anger at 150. Now, why is anger above desire? Because a lot of times desire is an expression of a repressed anger, right? That's why it's not really that much higher. It's 125 to 150. But at least at that point, a person is not desiring and exploiting in order to deal with anger. They're actually confronting it as anger. So it is a little bit of a higher vibration, right? Now, the predominant emotional state is hate. That's still very, very, very bad. The view of life is antagonistic. Life is against me. The view of God is vengeful, right? Fire and brimstone. He's a vengeful God. And their process is aggression. So you got to watch the angry guy, the angry person, the angry man, and especially the angry woman, because they can be actively aggressive and passive aggressive. Okay. Now here we are with pride, and I told you this is the petty kind of pride, right? This isn't the pride that results as a feeling that results from setting standards of behavior for yourself and living up to those standards. This is the pride of one's race or one's gang or whatever, things that one has nothing to do to create, or a situation that they didn't create, and it's just something that there's pulling at straws to have something to feel good about, to feel some sense of self-worth, right? Their predominant emotional state is scorn, right? Their view of life is that life is demanding, and their view of God is that God is indifferent, and their process is inflation, okay? Puffing up, right? Boasting, embellishing, right? That's still below the line. That's still in the survival paradigm. All of that. And why does pride go down there in the survival paradigm? Because it's the nasty, narcissistic kind of pride that causes people to try to one-up each other. It's very hateful. There's no love in that type of pride. Now, here we go. We're coming up above the line into reason and integrity. We reach courage with an energetic log of 200. The predominant emotional state of courage is affirmation. The view of life is feasible. The God view is permitting. And the process is one of empowerment, right? Above that is neutrality. And I like going through the reason and integrity paradigm, okay? And you can tell where I stand for the most part. Neutrality. Neutrality has an energetic log of 250, and the predominant state is trust. The view of life is satisfactory, and the God view is enabling. They believe the God is enabling them, and their process is one of release because they're neutral. Willingness, with an energetic log of 310. Willingness, the predominant emotional state in willingness is optimism. The view of life is hopeful, right? Willingness, people who are willing are hopeful, they're optimistic. And their God view is inspiring. Their process is one of intention. And that's a good place to be. That's right in the middle, right in the middle of the middle, right? That's when you really just start to wake up. If you feel in a funk, or if you've been knocked down, or, you got to come from somebody's funeral or whatever, and you're processing the grieving process, whatever it is that you might be dealing with, right? You could recognize the dawning of the light when you reach this energetic log of 310. Willingness. The predominant emotional state is optimism. The view of life is hopeful. They view God as inspiring, and their process is intention. Now let's go above that. Acceptance. So let's just say you actually were in a grieving process. either because of specific things that may have happened recently or just grieving, grieving overall, doing your shadow work, right? Uh, Acceptance, and remember, this is all in the reason and integrity zone, okay? Which you should never go any lower than. You should never allow yourself to go any lower than this zone, okay? Acceptance has an energetic log of 350. The predominant state is one of forgiveness. That is the oldest, I would say oldest trick in the book, but the oldest trick in the book, that expression has a negative connotation. That is the oldest secret to success in life. Forgiveness. I forgive you, and you know who you are. I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I deserve it. And that's something that everyone out there should keep in mind. Forgive. Forgive. It's for giving away. It's forgiveness. It's forgiveness. It's something, forgiveness. It's something that clears up your soul so that you can achieve your greatness, right? Just like the garbage in the garbage bag is forgiving to the big garbage can outside, right? It's forgiving to that garbage can so that it doesn't stink up my house. So if you hold on to resentment for anyone and you don't forgive them, it's stinking up your soul. It's stinking up your personality. It's stinking up your mind. It's stinking up your consciousness. Forgive that garbage. Forgive. Put it out. Forgive, right? So if you reach this state, now you're putting the trash out. Acceptance. Actually, let's give a couple of scratches. Yes, acceptance, we've reached it. All right? The predominant emotional state is forgiveness. Their view of life is harmonious, and they view God as merciful. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. God is merciful to me because I am forgiving to all of you assholes. And the process is transcendence. You see, I can call you assholes and still transcend. And here's the train. All right? So now we go to the fun part. As a rational objectivist, reason. Reason. Why? Because if you get rid of all of that garbage and you climb to the top of the reason and integrity zone, then you can actually get busy. You can actually work. You can actually think. You can actually do your job. You can actually run your business. You can actually come up with a business idea. You can actually make changes in your life, make smart decisions, because you're in the reason zone. You're no longer clouded by all of the negativity, right, that comes in the zones below this. Reason with an energetic log of 400. Your predominant emotional state is understanding. Well, for a man, honestly, you got no choice. You got to be the voice of reason, and you also have to be the stone of understanding. Your view of life is that life is meaningful. Your God view is that God is wise. And your process is one of abstraction. I like that. And that's where I like to hang, because I'm an idea man, right? I come up with businesses and I pursue them. I come up with I try to solve challenges, and I'm very passionate about solving problems in human life, helping to raise us into a human mode of existence, right? I have an inventive mind, and I like to be there. I can't be there if I'm dealing with any of those lower emotions. That's the fun place. That's where I like to be. I like to be thinking. I like to be doing. I like to be, building businesses and ideas and, coming up with all kind of stuff, and actually pursuing it and making it work. That is what I call the light, having the light inside. All right. And I like to cross over into love, right? Because, hey, love is love, right? We love, you always win. And that is the next highest. Now we're up out of the reason and integrity, although there is still reason and integrity. We're coming up into the spiritual paradigm. The spiritual paradigm, starting with love. Love at 500 hertz, 500 energetic log. The predominant emotional state is reverence. And their view of life is benign. And their view of God is loving. And their process is one of revelation. I love being there, being able to be open and having a gregarious and open, loving spirit. That is it's a blessing for God to dangle you up there in life at that level. And I don't like being any lower than that. Now, Joy, let's go up above that. Joy, shout out Aunt Joy again, and Leilani, and Albert. I love you guys. And the Joy energetic log is at 540. The predominant emotional state is serenity. And the view of life is that life is complete. Their God view is one. And their process is transfiguration. So I'm about, I would say, reason, love, and joy right about now. I wouldn't necessarily say that life is complete because I got a few things that I'm still in the process of doing. But I do feel at one with God. And this is a process of transfiguration. Now above that, we have peace. Which, ain't quite there yet. I'm on the way. Only sporadic moments, but we have peace with an energetic log of 600. The predominant state, emotional state, is bliss, and I think this is something you might want to talk to Muji about or something, right? And their view of life is perfect. The God view is all being, God and everything, and they're in a process of illumination. I, as well as most of humanity, is reaching for that zone. And of course, above that is enlightenment. The energetic log of 700 to 1000. The predominant emotional state is ineffable. And their view of life is. And their God view is self. Wow, that's powerful. And their process is pure consciousness. Now, will any of us reach above 700 while we still live in our physical bodies? I don't know. In fact, I think that might be a good question for us to ask ChatGPT, and Grok, just to see what the results would be, just to compare the results. But that's the end of what I wanted to talk about today, right? It took us from 10 to 11. Yep, it's just about 11 o'clock. I want to thank you for sticking with me and listening to all of this and understanding the difference between the brain frequency states and the emotional states, the different emotional states. They're not directly connected, but they are related. There is a relationship between the two. And when you come to the Biomed RX Health Center, especially if you're one of my Neurofeedback clients, this is one of the things that we inevitably work on together. And now, it's also a process of character, right? It's a matter of intention, because as you come out of states of neocortical dysregulation and you're able to feel peaceful, you're able to think clearly through neurofeedback training, then that frees you up, depending on your level of education and knowledge and experience and whatever religious training you may have had as a child, that frees you up to study what you think, how you think, why you think, what you think, what philosophy you follow, to become philosophically grounded so that you can hone the virtues of independence, honesty, integrity, justice, productiveness, pride, stoicism, and a number of other virtues that will make it easier for you to stay in the higher frequencies once your therapy has been done. And that's all I want to talk about today, right? That's all for today. Thank you for joining. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell for notification of new videos. I will be opening another location of the Biomed RX Health Center in short order, very soon. If you'd like me to talk about this or other holistic health topics, say so in the comments. And as always, I want everyone to stay kind, because kind is the new sexy. Kindness is the only sexy, man. People are too unkind in our society right now. Kind is the new sexy. Stay blessed, because it's important to be blessed, because you have been blessed. And stay healthy. Here's a couple of punches for you.